Hola! Today I'm going to be recapping the latest episode of Drag Race España Season 5, Snatch and Serve. Runways, tens. Snatch Game winner, tens. Queen eliminated, tens. I'm just kidding, but let's be real. This season keeps delivering. The queens walk back into the workroom after La Escandalo and Eva Harrington's shocking double elimination. Crystal doesn't want to talk due to her friend Eva leaving. Alexandra says there's always some drama with Crystal making someone else's elimination about herself. So it's a new week in the competition, and Supreme enters and announces that the library is officially open. Before it begins, in confessionals, Farhan says this challenge is made for her to win. Sure enough, she takes it because, hello edit. This was a great reading challenge though. Most of the reads were hilarious, and Donebula was even rhyming her insults. So for this week's Maxi Challenge, the queens will be playing the Snatch Game. As they prepare, it's clear that Crystal is pressed about being called a bulldog repeatedly in the reading challenge. She said it wasn't a joke, it's disrespectful. Girl, if you can dish it out, you have to be able to take it. So Supreme enters the workroom with this week's extra special guest judge, Bryce F.A. and Yannissi. I was expecting Puppy Poisson to walk in. After all, she has featured on every single season of Drag Race España. They do reference this later in the Snatch Game, saying production took precautions to ensure she couldn't come back. So the characters are thus. Laca is doing Francisco Franco, a Spanish general. Nyx is doing Mickey Mouse without calling herself Mickey Mouse. Saturn is doing Spanish singer Isabel Pantoja. Alexandra is doing the stoned version of Harry Potter. Farhan is doing former mayor from Valencia, Rita Barber. Crystal is doing Celia Cruz. Bryce warns that she is a tough character to do. He even goes as far to say as Lanacia Sparks went home doing Celia Cruz on Drag Race US. Maybe it's a cursed character like Beyonce? Margarita is doing fictional character Toronte. Daphne, who I do not have a picture of, is doing La Rebe de Plasencia. And Donebula is playing former lawyer and minister Edward Punset. So it's time for the Snatch Game, and the queens that stood out to me the most were Satin Greco, absolutely hilarious. Everyone was breaking character laughing at her. She was making out with everyone, she was throwing stuff, she was talking over the top of everyone. It was great. Laka was really good too. She played up the campy flamboyance perfectly. And Nyx was cracking me up for different reasons. It was the way she couldn't pick up her cards and how she kept swaying in her seat. In terms of flops, Crystal was bombing hard. Her Celia Cruz was so bland. I got over baked Harry Potter very quickly. I don't think changing into Liza Minnelli 3/4 of the way through did her any favours. And poor Donebula just made it too smart. Why do all the artistic creative queens choose such intellectual characters that can't land jokes? On Elimination Day, Alexandra acknowledges that her Snatch Game was a disaster. She has insight and good self-reflection. Crystal, on the other hand, says her Snatch Game was great, but the host wouldn't let her finish or say what she wanted. Very smart, Crystal. Blame Supreme Deluxe, the person that gets to decide your fate on this show. And decide she does. So on the main stage this evening, we have Supreme Deluxe looking very colourful. Not my favourite look of hers. I see what she's going for with the whole Tool runway, but it's a bit busy for me. We have Anna Locking, Los Harveys, and extra special guest judge Bryce Effe. Category is Al Tool Tool. Tool Madness, and I gave my top 2 to Donebula Mornau. You had to have known this was going to be my top 2. You had to have known. So it's time for the judges' critiques. Laka, Daphne, and Donebula are made safe, meaning the rest represent the bottoms and the tops. And I tell you, Donebula was really lucky to be safe. Her runway definitely saved her this week. First up, we have Satin Greco. She is told her performance was wonderful. She had running gags, she was hilarious, and her runway was stunning. Farhan is in the top for her over-the-top dramatic performance of Rita Barbara. On the runway, however, the judges wish they could have seen her face and her outfit. And I agree. Alexandra is in the bottom for not being funny. Her performance came across as sleazy and awkward. There was no depth. The look, however, is my favourite of hers yet. It fit her perfectly. Margarita is told her Snatch Game felt authentic. She was in character the entire time and the jokes landed. Nyx begins crying before the judges even start speaking, and Crystal actually comforts her, which was nice to see. The judges commend her for staying in character. They like that she takes risks even if they don't always pay off. I didn't love this particular outfit, but the makeup and the wig were a gag. Crystal is in the bottom for her lack of nuance as Celia Cruz. However, they say it's her best look, and I agree. Crystal says she held back in Snatch Game so as not to be disrespectful to her other sisters. And I'm like, that's not what you said though. That's not what you said. In Untucked, she storms out for a moment before reappearing like nothing happened. She feels betrayed by her sisters, saying they never allow her to speak, and she's tired of being painted the villain of the season. However, Alexandra says she's fake. She said on the main stage that she didn't want to speak over anyone, but in the workroom she was blaming host Supreme Deluxe. Satin says she does not like deceitful people. Back on the main stage, Satin gets her first win, yes! Before we get into the bottom two, we learn the outcome of the heart pieces. La Escándalo and Eva decided to give their piece of heart to Margarita Califata, and it makes sense that they had to decide on one queen together. Otherwise, Margarita would have had a full heart plus an extra half. Margarita gets to decide if she wants to use her heart to save somebody else. She chooses Nyx, saving her from lip syncing, which is really sweet. It's hard to tell whether they would have saved Nyx anyway. For storyline purposes, it would have made sense to see her lip syncing with Crystal. However, in this episode, Crystal had more of a rivalry with Alexandra. Alexandra and Crystal performed El Hombre del Piano by Ana Belén. Down Under, we know this as Piano Man by Billy Joel. I really love the Spanish version though, it's beautiful. Crystal was giving it all she had, clearly she knew the words, and Alexandra was giving emotion. Her wig came off at one point and it looked like she was really crying on the stage. However, they decide to keep her and send Crystal home. I think Crystal shot herself in the foot by blaming Supreme Deluxe this episode. Despite all that, Supreme does get choked up at her leaving. Who knows who she'll give her heart to? Either way, it was her time to go. And so, my friends, what did you think of this week's episode? As I said at the beginning of my recap, 10s across the board. Next week is the Rusical. I'm very excited. But as always, give me all the tea, and I'll see you very soon for another video.